Kelsey, and welcome to Diabetes Mythbuster. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a specialist diabetes dietitian, and I've worked in diabetes for nearly 20 years in the NHS, in the private sector, and also in charity. I specialize in diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes in South Asians, and I work very closely with the South Asian community. I have a specialist interest in the prevention of type 2 diabetes and managing type 2 diabetes, but also in behavior change and what kind of things will help us make a healthy change, and that kind of thing. So I am also joined by Freeha J, who is also a specialist diabetes dietitian, and I'll give her a hand over to her and she'll tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello, Pav. Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. As Pav said, that I'm Freeha J. I'm a specialist diabetes dietitian, but alongside I do my freelance work. So I do online consultations with South Asians all around the world. So one day it will be Kenya, the other day it will be Mauritius. So any South Asians all over the world. I also do talks, and those talks can be about healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, to different organizations and different groups. But I specialize as a diabetes dietitian as well.
That's brilliant. You have so much experience, which will be so useful today talking about myths. And we chose to talk about the myths about diabetes. And there's lots of conflicting messages, confusing messages about diabetes. And, you know, we can't always be sure what is correct and what is not correct. So we thought we'd take this opportunity to bust some of these common myths. First of all, I just want to talk about diabetes in the South Asian community. And we know that type 2 diabetes is really common in the South Asian community. In Britain, it's up to 6 times more likely in a South Asian community. That's if you're from an Indian, Pakistani, or Bangladeshi background. So the risk is comparatively really, really high. And there's lots of reasons for that. As South Asians, we have a genetic predisposition to having type 2 diabetes. And coupled with our lifestyle and the way we eat and our activity levels, that risk increases. So there's lots of things that we can do to try and reduce that risk. But if you are concerned that you do have diabetes or have a risk of developing type 2 diabetes, then you should speak to your GP for a blood test. So the difference between, there's 2 main types of diabetes, and the difference between the two is that type 2 diabetes is something that develops usually later in life, after the age of 25 in South Asians. And it's usually connected to carrying a lot of weight, especially around your middle. And there's a genetic aspect to it as well. And then there's type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition. And you can't do anything about it. It's when your body just stop producing insulin altogether, and it's treated in a very different way to type 2 diabetes. So they're the main differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Here we're going to be talking about type 2 diabetes mainly. And as I said, we have a lot of challenges within the South Asian community. A lot of the time there's conflicting messages and we don't know what to think. And also there is, you know, certain aspects of our lifestyle in terms of diet. We're not so sure what to eat. Are traditional foods okay to eat? You know, in the West, we have adopted more of a Western style of eating, and that's not always healthier. It's higher in fat and sugar sometimes. So there's lots of things to consider. But it's important to consider lifestyle as a whole to try and reduce your risk and help to manage type 2 diabetes. Do you have anything to add, Freeha, off the back of that?
Yes, Pav. I think really with the communication with all the South Asian people, I've realized that sometimes it's lack of awareness as well. When we discuss it with them, when we talk to them, then they do those things, then they do follow those things. But I think reaching the audience, reaching the people is also very important. So one is that, and then again, as you said, that myths are there. There is certain things which have been coming on from their parents, their grandparents, and they so much believe in them that sometimes even us as professionals telling them they don't believe us, and there's this sort of disbelief. So there are 2 sides to it. One is the too much ingrained myths, and the other is lack of awareness.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And there's often messages going around on social media and groups spreading kind of different messages. And then people are left thinking, what shall I do? Because they're
Absolutely.
contradicting each other. So it's really difficult to know what's right. And this is why this myth busting session is so useful today. So we've picked a few topics to talk about. They're mainly focused around food. A lot of the myths that exist are mainly around food. So one of the kind of food groups, if you like, that gets talked about quite a lot is fruit and fruit juices. Are you allowed to have fruit if you have diabetes? That's a question that I get asked quite often. And there's certain fruits that people say that you shouldn't eat because it'll affect your blood glucose levels, like mangoes and bananas and grapes. So it's considering are fruits good for you? And do you experience that same myth as well, Fariha?
Absolutely. When I talk about fruits, they are expecting that I will give them a list. So please give us a list. What fruits shall we have? And when I say to them that yes, you're absolutely fine to have all the fruits, then again, it's really difficult for them to convince. So it's just telling them that it's not about certain fruits. It's just thinking about the amounts and explaining to them about the fiber in them, the different vitamins in them. But yes, specifically what I get is mangoes in the mango season and bananas. And many times they say that I'm having all my fruit, but no, I'm not having my banana because I've got diabetes. And
Yeah.
so we get this a lot, very common.
Yeah. And I also think that sometimes when you're faced with something to eat, you want a snack, it's better to go for a piece of fruit than it is for something else compared to a biscuit or I don't know, a bit of cake or crisps or something like that. So it's usually a really good snack option or a dessert option even. And it has so many benefits. The benefits outweigh anything. So it has, like you said, fiber, vitamins, minerals. It's fairly low in calories. So it's an ideal snack if you're trying to manage your weight as well.
Yes,
And
what we say is that it's all about the portion as well. So usually when I say to them that okay, you're fine to have grapes, they become really happy. Oh wow, we can have grapes. But then again, you have to further think. You can have grapes, but then how much of grapes you're having? So not
yeah,
sitting down and finishing the punnet, but just thinking, is it 80 grams? Is it handful of grapes? That is fine. So first understanding that yes, you can have fruit, but then coming forward from that, how much can you have is also really important.
that's a really good point. Is not to have a large amount in one go and to spread it out in the day and have a handful at a time. That's
Yeah.
that's the best way to talk about fruit, I think. But generally, very good for you. When it comes to fruit juices, what do you advise?
So with fruit juices, what happens is that you have broken up all the fruit. So as soon as you have the juice, it will quickly absorb in your system and give you a sugar spike. Yes, the fruit juice will have its vitamins, it will have minerals, but think you are thinking about your sugar levels. It will give you a spike because you've broken it down and you've broken the roughage as well. We
Mhm.
want more of the roughage in your body, but with the juice, you're not left with the roughage. So it will give you a sugar spike. So what I usually recommend is that go for fruits, whole fruits, and have them with their skins on, so you're getting more and more fiber. But if
Yeah.
you really, really feel like having that fresh juice, again, think about the amount. So no more than 150 ml, and possibly having something else alongside with it that it slows down its absorption in our body.
Yeah, that's a brilliant bit of advice. And in terms of fruit and veg portions, we say have a minimum of 5 a day. So if you have fruit juice or a smoothie, no more than 150 ml counts as a portion. So if you have any more than that, it doesn't really count as a portion. So it's better generally to eat the whole fruit. So you get the fiber and all the vitamins and minerals and roughage, like you say, instead of having the fruit juice itself. But it's okay sometimes, now and again. And then the second myth I want to talk about is around carbohydrates. So when I say carbohydrates, I'm talking about starchy carbohydrates like rice and roti, pasta, bread, potatoes, that kind of food. And a myth that we hear quite often is carbs are not good for diabetes management. So you should either eliminate them or have very low carbohydrate diets. Um, and the way I want to bust this myth is to say that carbohydrates are the food group that affects your blood glucose levels, but we have to be careful and choose the right type, and also be careful of how much we're having as well. When I say the right type, going for the higher fiber varieties, brown rice, brown pasta, wholemeal, whole granary breads, keeping the skin on potatoes. So having enough roughage and enough fiber in those types of varieties, and keeping it to a small part of your plate, not basing your whole meal around the carbohydrate. It should be a quarter of your meal, not the main part of your meal. That's the way I like to talk about carbohydrates. Is there anything you want to add, Fariha?
Over here, I want to say that sometimes it's really upsetting when I speak to my patients and they have completely eliminated carbs from their diet. So, and it's explaining to them that how important they are, because they're a source of energy and they're a source of B vitamins, they're a source of fiber. So we should not be eliminating them. The second thing which I come across is, which is sometimes really strange, is that many of them will have bread, but then they will not have the roti and the chawal, the rice and the chapati. And then I have to explain to them that both of them are carbs. And as you said, at the end of the day, it's just thinking about how much they're having. And even if they're having their roti, going for whole grain atta, if they're having their rice, going for brown rice or basmati rice. So again, first I have to explain to them that you don't have to have bread. These are also your foods can also give you the goodness. And then half a plate of vegetables, quarter portion of your plate with carbs. So rather than filling up your plate with rice, shift the rice to the corner and bulk up your meal with vegetables.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a shame that we're rejecting our own traditional foods like roti, chapati, and rice, because that is our staple. And then switching it to kind of more processed food like breads and wraps and things like that. So actually, our traditional food is healthy. It's just that I think our portions are too big.
Absolutely. I say to them, you can have your idli, dosa, poha, and I get these surprising looks. And then I explain to them that, you can have it in a healthier way. Go for idli, go for dosa.
Yeah.
Make it healthy and then think of the portion.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, I have the same experience with people that, it's just the type and the quantity that's really, really important. And something that we should emphasize, that what is a carbohydrate? Look for your healthier portion and look for a healthier type. I think that's the bottom line with that. Another group of carbohydrates is sugary foods and sweet foods, sweet drinks, foods like cakes and biscuits, chocolate, that kind of thing. And they're the kinds of foods that people may have as a snack, and add sugar to food or drinks. And quite often I hear that I'm having jaggery or gur instead of sugar. So that's better for me. I know that's better. It's got more fiber in it, so it must be better for me. And quite often people say it quite proudly that I've switched from white sugar to gur, and I know it's better for me. And then it takes some time to understand that actually, sugar is sugar. Gur and honey, all the syrups, things like maple syrup, agave, everything is still sugar. And it still affects your blood glucose levels in the same way as regular sugar. And people are often quite surprised to hear that. It's something that takes time to adjust to, I think, for some people. Do you find the same?
And yes, absolutely. I think, Pavin, there's this sort of emotional attachment and this cultural thing to it as well. So it's really difficult for them to let go. So when I say to them that, okay, if you're having your jaggery or gur, it's exactly the same as your sugar, they go in a shock. But then I explain to them that you should be aware that both of them are the same. But if you choose to have gur, go for gur. But again, how much you're having, and keeping in mind that yes, if I'm having gur, that will be affecting my sugar levels, but I'm still choosing to have it, and not that because I'm having gur and then I'm free from my affecting my sugar levels at all. So I say to them that go for gur. Again, keep it occasional, keep it as a treat, and but always think that it will be affecting my sugar levels.
Yeah, because a lot of people get the taste from gur as well, and they prefer the taste of gur. So it's important to consider that it's still a sugar, but if you prefer the taste of it, now and again is okay. And again, the quantity as well, to think of. So it's not as simple as I've done a straight swap and it's fine. It's still sugar and it still affects your glucose level. So, and if you're trying to
every day in routine, it will affect your sugar levels. But sometimes if you're out, if you're with your friends, it's okay to have it. But just be mindful that if you're looking at your sugars, you have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, and also the other thing to say about sugary foods is that if you're trying to lose weight, which a lot of people with type 2 diabetes in the South Asia community are trying to lose weight to help control their diabetes better, and then that's additional calories. So if you're having things like sugar and sugary foods, that's adding calories that you can easily, swap out or reduce to reduce the calories that you're having.
I've gotten used to them. I think I always say to them that please train your taste buds, train them. Initially you will not like the taste of your tea because you're very used to having gur tea or sugar in a tea. And I say to them that slowly reduce it and give yourself that time, be patient, and ultimately you will train your taste buds and you will get used to the less reduced sugar.
Yeah, I think you're right. It takes time to adjust. So if you do it gradually with things like salt or sugar, your taste buds gradually adjust over time. And then quite often people ask me about sweeteners as well, artificial sweeteners. So there's a lot of kind of misconception about sweeteners and whether, they cause other health problems. So quite often people are, steer clear of sweeteners, but they will have sugar. So I say to people, if you have quite a lot of sugar in your diet or sugary drinks, an easy way to make that swap is to switch to a low sugar or a diet version, or use an artificial sweetener and add it to drinks and food instead, because they are safe. So everything that's been approved in Europe has been approved and it's safe to use. And also, if you're trying to cut down calories and weight, it's a brilliant way to make that saving, especially if you have a lot of sugar in your diet already.
There is a lot of scare, Pav. People are so scared of it. And you will get Alzheimer's and you will get cancer. And I say to them that peace of mind is also very important. So if you're always mentally stressed about it, then that's not the way to go forward. So first, you really need to believe what we're saying, that it is absolutely fine, it is safe to use, and then go for it. So this is something to keep in mind.
It's almost a scenario where it's good if you have a lot of sugar in your diet to make a straight swap. If you're not able to cut down the sugar, ideal would be to, if you're having drinks, for example, to go for things like milk and water instead of a sugary drink or diet drink. But if it is, like you're saying, causing you stress, then it's best to cut down the sugar in your diet anyway already. That's a really, really good point, actually. And then one of the other questions we get asked is about, can children get diabetes? And we are seeing, so typically 90% of children have type 1 diabetes, and that's the autoimmune diabetes that we can't do anything about. It's something that's not connected to lifestyle. It's not connected to being overweight. And it's something that unfortunately does happen in 90% of children. 90% of cases that happen, diabetes in children. But having said that, there's a growing amount of type 2 diabetes, which is linked to being overweight in children. And in the UK, there's a figure that says children are up to 14 times more likely to develop type 2 diabetes from a South Asian background compared to a white background. So there is a risk there. And I think it comes down to how we eat as a whole family. And whatever habits we have as adults, the children will be adopting those same habits. So it's great to, when you make changes, healthy eating changes, it's great to do it as a whole family. Involve the children, involve all members of the family in shopping, cooking, eating. And they will get a really good idea and sense of what healthy eating looks like. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a genetic predisposition. Definitely, there's one point is that. But yes, absolutely. I have witnessed it in front of my own eyes that how the lifestyles have changed, how children are eating more and more just because the parents are eating more, the portions are bigger, the takeaways have increased, the desserts have increased, the overall lifestyle has changed, and especially with the pandemic, things have also changed a lot. There is no activity among the children, where we say that at least 1 hour of activity a day, and that has come down significantly. So there's so many factors involved.
Yeah, and it's important to consider the pandemic and the effect that's had on lifestyle as a whole. And it's important to try and get back on your feet and be active and switch to your healthy eating habits after the pandemic as well. And then finally, we get asked quite often about, can I reverse my type 2 diabetes? And it's been in the news. There's been lots of research about reversing type 2 diabetes. We tend to say putting type 2 diabetes into remission. So that means that your glucose levels may return to normal. You may stop your medication for diabetes, but we say remission because we don't know if that reversal will stay in the long term. And also, we want people to carry on going to their health checkups and annual reviews for diabetes, because if there are any kind of problems related to diabetes, that will still show up. So that's why we say remission as opposed to reversal. But the good news is you can put your diabetes into remission, especially if you're fairly newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, up to 6 years or so. And if you follow quite a strict way of eating and you lose weight, through guidance with a healthcare professional like a dietitian, then you can put your diabetes into remission. And I think maybe even 5-10 years ago, we used to say diabetes gets worse over time. You can't do anything about it. But what's lovely to say now is actually you can change that course, the path of diabetes, and you can put it into remission. What do you think?
It's just about that there are no guarantees. It's just that we want you to go into remission. It's not that. And there will be people who will stay in remission forever. But you need to keep on, because we say remission, because we want you to keep on coming back, as you mentioned, for your checks, and that you still follow a healthy lifestyle, because we want it to be for life and not just for a certain period of time.
Yes.
So absolutely, we used to say it's a progressive condition, and that has changed.
Yeah. And I think with remission, it's important to say that you have to lose a significant amount of weight to put your diabetes into remission and stop diabetes medication. But then also, if you gain weight in the future, then it could be that your diabetes returns. So it's really important to lose weight and get some support and help from a healthcare professional to keep that weight off in the long term.
And I think the words make a lot of difference. When we say remission, it gives them this, they feel, it encourages them to make changes, and they think that they can make a change. And it's not all doom and gloom when we used to say that it's all, you're going to progress and it's going to get worse and worse by the day. So this is a positive thing, which brings a positive change on our patients as well, I realize.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I agree. So that brings us to the end of the session.